Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. Last night in his State of the Union address, over all the heckling, President Biden reviewed significant achievements his administration and congressional Democrats are delivering for the American people. The lowest unemployment rate in over 50 years, a manufacturing boom in clean energy, semiconductors, and infrastructure, expanding health care for veterans and lowering prescription drug costs for seniors and people with diabetes, beating the opioid epidemic and addressing our national mental health crisis, historic action on climate change. But this morning, we return not to focus on advancing this robust agenda of progress, but instead to take up an authentically trivial pursuit, all based on the obsessive victimology of right-wing politics in America. The majority has called a hearing to revisit a 2-year-old story about a private editorial decision by Twitter not to allow links to a single New York Post article made for a 2-day period that had no discernible influence on anyone or anything. The New York Post published the article on its own pages, and it was carried by lots of other media outlets. It was widely discussed, including on Twitter itself, even during the brief moment in time when links weren't provided, and it was a fixture in right-wing media for the next 3 weeks before the election. I think even the chairman and other members of this committee were out on TV and social media talking about it. But instead of letting this trivial pursuit go, my colleagues have tried to whip up a faux scandal about this 2-day lapse in their ability to spread Hunter Biden propaganda on a private media platform. Silly does not even begin to capture this obsession. What's more, Twitter's editorial decision has been analyzed and debated ad nauseum. Some people think it was the right decision. Some people think it was the wrong decision. But the key point here is that it was Twitter's decision. Twitter is a private media company. In America, private media companies can decide what to publish or how to curate content however they want. If Twitter wants to have nothing but tweets commenting on New York Post articles run all day, it can do that. If it makes such tweets mentioning the New York Post never see the light of day, they can do that too. That's what the First Amendment means. Twitter can ban Donald Trump for inciting violent insurrection against the Union, as he was impeached by the House of Representatives, and as 57 of 100 senators found he did. And it can also try to resurrect his political career. Elon Musk just purchased Twitter and therefore controls its editorial content. And among the first things he did was to fire some people, hire some people, denounce some prior decisions, and reinstate an unrepentant and still clearly lying Donald Trump to the platform. Those decisions, however heroic or imbecilic you think they might be, are protected by the First Amendment in the United States of America. Officially, Twitter happens to think they got it wrong about that day or two period. In hindsight, Twitter's former CEO, Jack Dorsey, called it a mistake. This apology might be a statement of regret about the company being overly cautious about the risks of publishing contents of potentially hacked or stolen materials, or it may reflect craven surrender to a right-wing pressure campaign. But however you interpret it, the apology just makes the premise of this hearing all the more absurd. The professional conspiracy theorists who are heckling and haranguing this private company have already gotten exactly what they want, an apology. What more do they want? And why does the U.S. Congress have to be involved in this nonsense when we have serious work to do for the American people? But what makes this hearing tragic is that if our colleagues really wanted to examine a serious problem involving American democracy and social media, my friends, it is staring us in the face right now. Twitter and other social media companies acted as central organizing and staging grounds for the January 6th violent insurrection against Congress and against Vice President Pence. Twitter became the national and global platform for incitement to seditious violence against our government, and a forum on the day of attack for coordinating logistical movements and tactical maneuvers in the mob violence against our police officers. In the lead up to January 6th, Twitter decided to allow Donald Trump and countless MAGA extremists to use the platform to spread Trump's ridiculous big lie and disinformation about the election. And soon the internet was replete with incitement for civil war, race war, insurrection, revolution, and mob violence. Twitter did so despite increasingly desperate appeals from its own employees to act in the interests of public safety approaching January 6th. The First Amendment is robust and expansive, but it stops at this point. It does not protect anyone's right to engage in incitement to imminent lawless action and violent action against the government or against other people. This is the Brandenburg Principle. There's no carve-out to free speech for speech relating to the New York Post or Hunter Biden or laptops, but there is a significant carve-out when the speech is deliberately calculated to produce imminent violence and chaos against the government. That's why Twitter's deliberate indifference to Trump's big lies and incitement, its decision to ignore the pleas of its own employees to deal with the impending explosion against our police and against Congress on January 6th, are matters that require real investigation and reflection. Rather than conspiring to suppress right-wing MAGA speech, as my colleagues astonishingly claim, Twitter and other media companies knowingly facilitated Trump's spread of disinformation, or what his own sycophantic Attorney General William Barr would come to call bullshit, and gave voice to his followers' glorification of violence and calls for civil war. Today, we will hear from Anika Collier-Navaroli, a former Twitter employee turned corporate whistleblower and patriotic hero who raised the alarm inside Twitter and about numerous accelerating warning signs that she saw leading up to the violent and catastrophic attack on the Capitol on January 6, 2021. Ms. Navaroli is here today to publicly testify about how senior officials at Twitter resisted her efforts to put policies in place or to enforce existing policies to promote public safety and to defend our national security. Twitter management, however, did not want to cross Donald Trump. I don't know precisely how we will solve the problem of private social media platforms being used for the organization of coups and incitement of violent insurrections against the United States or Brazil or any other country. But this is a grave problem confronting democracy, not just in America, but all over the world. It is not a silly, concocted partisan issue. We must analyze it carefully and legislate effectively to address it, and we must never forget that the enemies of democracy, led by autocrat and war criminal Vladimir Putin, are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on social media propaganda and disinformation to destabilize democracy all over the world, even as they wage their genocidal, illegal, aggressive war against the people of Ukraine. How are we going to prevent the liberal democracies from being overrun by propaganda, disinformation, and violent incitement? Well, listen to Anika Collier-Navaroli, because she has something important to say. She poses a problem that would be worthy of a serious congressional hearing, and we should have one. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.